Welcome to the Audrain Automobile Museum here in Newport, Rhode Island, and to our exhibition, What's the Super in Supercars? And I'm joined here by Ben Chester, our assistant curator here at the Audrain, and we are standing next to what is arguably the most indisputable supercar in this incredible supercar exhibition. Would you agree?
I no doubt 100% agree with you, Donald. This is one of the greatest mechanical creations of all time.
This is, of course, the Mclaren F1. And what is so amazing about this car is that when we think about what makes a supercar, this is obviously an incredibly capable road car, beautifully designed with no cost object in mind, and also is that rare beast designed as a road car that won overall at Le Mans. I mean, does it get better than that?
It's crazy to think about because McLaren set out to build the greatest road car they could. They wanted it to have road manners, drivability, connection with the driver, and they, like you said, with cost no object, took every nut and bolt and narrowed it down to one of the greatest pieces of machinery of all time. All of the pieces of this car add up to just an unbelievably connected driving experience. It wasn't about horsepower. It wasn't about pure speed, but the reality is it has a lot of horsepower and it goes over 240 miles an hour. It's just, the whole package adds up to just a very well-mannered car to drive on the road. And the reality is that translates into great racing manners, wouldn't you say?
Exactly. Gordon Murray, who did the mechanical and engineering design of the F1, worked with the McLaren racing team and designed some of the most successful Formula One cars of all time. He always had the idea of doing a great road car that had the sort of the essence of a Formula One car without any of the privations of a Formula One racing car. And so when Ron Dennis decided, you know what, we've been absolutely, doing the business on the racetrack with our McLaren Honda Formula One cars, we're going to build a car to prove that we are not only great race car builders, but we can build the best sports car in the world. And so when a designer gets a brief like that from the boss and says, just go for it, he did. And one of the things I think that was one of the greatest decisions he made, of course, is that he engaged Peter Stevens to actually style the car interior and exterior. And it's also one of those cars that today, just about every supercar, and certainly the current production McLaren cars, take their cues from this car. This is what a modern supercar looks like. And what I love about this shape as well is the fact that it's completely unadorned. You don't see big wings and flaps and all of this. The shape works so well, not only aesthetically, but functionally. It again speaks to the greatness of this particular car.
Sure. You listen to Peter Stevens talk about the overall ergonomics of this car, and it's unbelievable that with so many details, the car turned out to be such a behaved road car. He goes on and on about little details like gurney flaps in the rear, the 3 seats on the interior. Originally, they just wanted to have a center seat supercar.
A single-seater.
A single-seater. And the reality was, after time discussing with the team, the car had to be a great road car that was really useful.
A practical road car.
A practical road car that you could use in an everyday way. And you notice the luggage compartments that we'll talk about and other aspects of the car that make it truly usable. The 3 seats weren't an original thought. They didn't say, we're going to make a 3-seater road car. But that's just the way it played out. And I think that's really fits the theme of the McLaren F1 in the rest of its life and how it's turned into such a legendary piece of work.
One of the things that we mentioned in the exhibition overview when we did that at the opening of the show was also the fact that the seating arrangement in this car has a great benefit for a car of this type, because in most high-performance sports cars of this layout with the mid-engine, you sit off-center. So you've got these big wheel arches that intrude because the engine is so far forward in the chassis that the driver always sits slightly askew. Obviously, with the central seating position, he or she is straight ahead, no worries about bending the knees and ankles, and the passengers also get the benefit of having a great leg position because they're slightly behind the driver, so they can stick their legs straight out without the intrusion of the wheel wells. It's absolutely a brilliant solution. And it's an interesting thing because, of course, everything old is new again. They actually made some single position cars Panhard made a big sedan back in the 1930s with a center driving position because it's practical. You get the best vision possible. But today it seems slightly odd, but it's perfect for this car, especially again, given the fact that McLaren made their mark in single-seater racing. So you get even more of a McLaren feel about that. Practicality. I've said this so often about these cars and about this particular car, which has been graciously loaned to the exhibition by Miles Collier and the Revs Institute collection in Naples, Florida. Miles and his wife drove this car from Naples, Florida, from their home there, to their ranch in Montana. This is a car. It's a car that can actually be used. And I think that's one of the most extraordinary things about this car and about the McLaren F1 in general.
I would absolutely agree, and I got to give so many props to Miles and his wife for making that trip. It's just a thing of legend now. But we're moving into the future, Donald. Hybrid cars, electric cars, electric steering is coming along with that, for better or for worse. The McLaren F1 pulls the best sensations of driving and puts it right in your fingertips and right in your back. Whatever the road surface is, you feel the change. All of these sensations are heightened in the F1, and I think that's an aspect of driving that we're moving away from, I think, as companies start to focus more on profit margins and not the true driving experience. But you mentioned the layout. You're sitting in the center. The seat is fixed, and I think one of the most fascinating things about the ownership experience is that if an F1 changes hands, McLaren will send some techs out to you to measure you up and fit you to the seat. So the seat will not move. They'll adjust it, and once it's fixed, it's fixed. And essentially, the steering wheel won't move, and the pedals won't move either. So you absolutely have the perfect driving position. You get nice and comfortable. And with the rake of the windshield and the short front bonnet, you have the perfect vision. And like you said, there aren't these intrusive wheel arches. You're not buried, in the left or the right of the car. Everything about it is just the ultimate feeling of where you should be sitting and what you should feel when you're driving a sports car.
The interesting thing as well that you bring up, Ben, is the fact the involvement of McLaren today with these cars that they built a decade and a half ago, 2 decades ago, is remarkable because they still service these cars.
Sure.
And either you ship your car to Woking to have it serviced, or you have the McLaren technician visit your local McLaren dealer to service the car, because there are apparently 3 or 4 people that do service McLaren F1s worldwide.
Yes.
And it's also, again, a testament to the fact these cars are driven. People often ask, how fast does something go, or how much is something worth?
Sure.
And of course, the value story in these cars is quite legendary. Mm-hmm. But I think it's not about the value, how valuable these cars are. It's why they're so valuable.
Right.
They tell the story of what creates value. The interest in this car, this is one of the greatest cars of the 20th century. So therefore, its attributes lend themselves to the accumulation of value.
Yep.
It wouldn't matter if this car was worth $1 million, $2 million, or $10 million. It's an extraordinary vehicle that absolutely speaks to its time in a way that we will not see again. Great cars are being created today. Great cars were created in the 1950s, the 1940s, the 1920s. But this speaks so much to its time that I think that one of the things that also amuses me about this car is you think about corporate product decisions. And as we mentioned before, McLaren Honda was absolutely winning on the Formula One racetrack. So of course, naturally, McLaren went to Honda and said, "We'd like an engine for our super road car."
Right.
And Honda said, "Well, we're not really interested." And then they went to Isuzu. And Isuzu said, "Well, I don't think it's a project that's for us either." And so it ended up with this BMW engine, which is so ironic about the fact that they were winning on the track with Honda and put a BMW engine in this car. And think about what they must have thought at Honda after this car was created.
I wonder if Honda has any regrets about it, but maybe they're relieved that they don't have to do all of the back-end support that McLaren does now with the BMW technology. But there's Ferrari classic department, there's a Porsche classic department, even Nissan is starting restoration departments, but the ownership experience of the McLaren F1 clearly is not cheap, but it's fantastic that McLaren understands the significance of this car, what it represents in the true scope of the automotive world, and they still dedicate humans and time to really keep these cars going. I mean, they're living history, and they really have dedicated the effort to making sure they stay on the road and continue to tell the story for years on, and I applaud McLaren for that so much.
It's an astonishing thing to see here in the McLaren F1, the definition for me, for Ben, of what is super in a supercar. And as we look at some other cars in the exhibition, we'll be asking that question over and over again, and more importantly, asking you to define what it is in a car that you feel makes it super. Thanks for joining us.